do like?
Can we do like 9/11?
Okay, you guys are live.
9/11. Oh wait, that's the first thing it was.
That's the first thing that said. Wow.
Scroll on.
We seem to have a good, almost a reputation of going live and not being ready.
We always got some good hot mic moments, but welcome to the Horizon Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We are back for another episode here on this lovely Monday, October 28th of 2024. Welcome back. We are here in the radio station again. Today, we are coming to you with a little bit more of a serious topic, as we have been doing on these recent Mondays. Today, we're going to be talking about basically historical events and how we viewed them as children versus how we view them now. And this isn't just like one historical event, how we viewed. These are like two instances that happened like once while we were a child and once while we were an adult. So one that I'd like to start with is just kind of like how we looked at conflicts and armed conflicts and stuff like that. Specifically looking at like Afghanistan and the Afghanistan and Iraq wars while we were growing up, and then like looking at like Ukraine now and how we view and internalize that information. So just to get started, just something interesting to me, and just kind of like how I process these events. You know, when you think about conflict as a kid, specifically, I feel like for guys, not that it's necessarily glorified when you're children, but you aren't exposed to like the true horrors of everything that goes on within conflict and stuff like that. You just see what's on the news and you're like, oh, okay, there's US people in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not like you're not fully aware of like there's troops in Afghanistan and, you know, yeah, they're doing this, but they're also doing some not so good stuff. You know, I feel like also when you're younger, you're a lot more, I guess, blind to, both sides of the coin of war. I feel like you're a little bit more likely to look at what's going on as just good.
That's one thing that's always really bothered me was whenever, like as a kid, I'd be told about like the Afghan war or the Iraq war, and they'd always talk about, oh, here's our troops out fighting for freedom. You know, only talk about that. I'm like, yeah, but why are we there? And I never really answered that. The closest I got was, I'm like, that's not an answer.
Yeah.
They never wanted to tell me that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Even then, because honestly, the Afghanistan war was something that stemmed all the way from our early childhood, starting back in like 2001, directly after the tower strike, September 18th, 2001, George Bush gets on TV and says, we're going to war with the Taliban.
So let's invade Iraq for some reason.
And then 20 years later, while we are growing up, we were children and we're adults now. The U.S. is now finally pulling out. And it's just really interesting to see the evolution of the war as we evolved from young humans into adults. Just seeing all the details, and especially, going back and reading it now. You have a sense of patriotic pride, I guess, for, what we did with Osama bin Laden and eliminating him and stuff like that. But then
that was in Pakistan.
Yeah. But then, you go back and you look at, the civilian collateral damage from those conflicts and stuff like that. And, it kind of makes you not feel as good about what, the U.S. went in and did. It's interesting to me, just how, we kind of have we're going back to like what I was saying about like having like a childlike innocence and stuff like that with major conflicts or major events in history and stuff like that.
I used to think that Iraq and Iran were the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
They just called them different things just to try and confuse me or something.
Well, they do have similar names.
Exactly.
So the only difference is like one letter, I think.
Yeah, and they're also right next to each other too.
Yeah,
which didn't help. So I just didn't get the difference. So I was like, oh no.
And then also just yes, you understand that there's like a human toll side to conflict and everything like that, but you don't really I don't know. I can't say you. I don't want to generalize or anything like that. But at least for me, when I was a child, I was like, yeah, people are dying and stuff like that. But when you're a kid, you don't think, oh, this is a person that has a family, has a wife, has a kid, has
That is one thing that is a lot of time overlooked. I feel like because like back when I was younger, I didn't pay attention to that kind of stuff. I'm like, like did that person have a family and stuff like that? But now I like, wow, like that's actually a little more serious than what I thought it was. Than I thought it was.
yeah, and it's
When I was a kid, I'd always hear stuff like, "Oh, why are we attacking enter a country here?" And it's all like, "Oh, so that means." If I always got the generalized idea that they would like try to justify it, like, "Oh, because they attacked us, we gotta attack them." But then that made me as a kid often think that like, no, everyone in this country took a part in 9/11, which is just not true at all.
no,
But that's what I thought. So I was like, yeah, let's go get them all. Like, we realized that's like barely anyone actually did. We're just killing people for the sake of killing people.
yeah, and it's like grossly overly broad generalizations like that are just so inherently dangerous, especially when you have consumers of the message that are young and impressionable
Mhm.
and are willing to listen to everything you have to say and maybe take it to face value or
And I did. So that's what scares me.
exactly. But like as we got older, we start to develop the ability to critically think a little bit better and take the messages and stuff like that and the events and kind of look at it like, hey, this happened and this is why it happened. So yeah, but then not just like focusing on wars and stuff like that, but also like we talked about talking about like hurricanes and stuff like that, looking at like obviously like Helene and Milton just happened, and like I remember like specifically for myself right after Helene happened, just like going through Twitter and just seeing all the videos and stuff like that, and just how sad and like distraught I felt for the people that are were impacted by that stuff. Like you really can't imagine it as a child, or like even like grasp what's going on. You can, some children can. I unfortunately could not. I wasn't very bright.
I wasn't either. I thought Sweden and Switzerland were the same thing until like 2018. I'm not kidding.
But lost my train of thought. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
You good? And it's I don't know. It's just interesting to see that transition.
Same with hurricanes, because I don't live anywhere close to the coast. I've
Yeah.
lived here all my year. I've just never really thought about it much at all, and I only came to realize it later on as like people became more connected online, because now I have friends that live on the coast, or people are getting impacted by it that I can actually more see and understand why it's such a problem. Now, initially, I just hear about this and it just sounded like some other story. It's like, oh, something that happened
Yeah.
somewhere else. I'm like, well, why should I care?
Well, and it's like looking at like Katrina, for example, and stuff like that. Like now, all we do is hear about how bad it was. Granted, most of us were what 4, 5.
That was in 2005, right?
Yeah, 4 or 5, 3 years old. Very young, just starting to
Literally 1 year old.
I would have been 2.
Dang, okay. I feel a little old now, but it's okay.
I remember it. Don't worry.
But yeah, it's like we obviously, I'm a 4-year-old at that age. I'm like, oh, this is going on in the news. Bad stuff's happening, but bad stuff's happening. That's my thought process and my rationalization. There's no more. It's just that there's bad stuff happening, and I don't think about it anymore.
I feel like that's kind of the mindset that most kids have whenever they're around that age, whenever like stuff like that happens. They'll just go, oh, bad stuff is happening. It's cool to see the destruction though.
Yeah. Well, or just like looking back like at like a timeline or something like that and just seeing like all the crazy events that we've lived through and like how bad they really were. But then like since we were children, it's like, was it really that bad?
Yeah, but
For us,
when
like-
you watch it as adults, now you see, okay, now this had a lot bigger impact than I thought it did.
Yeah, like I think like a really good example of that would be like the housing crisis of 2008. We were all very young.
Ooh, that one hit me hard.
Yeah, I know. Like,
No,
like the biggest financial concern for me at that time was like making sure I got like 2 meals at McDonald's every week. So like I didn't have a bunch of like financial stress or anything like that, but like going back and like talking to my parents about it now and just like the financial stress that they were under and all the sacrifices that they had to make and everything like that. I don't know. It definitely gives me a new perspective on everything like that. And, it makes you appreciative for, stuff and
Say,
your parents and stuff like that. So
See, I back then I used to get like a ton of these like Bionicle Lego toys, and I would like keep track of them. And like just now I'm actually organizing them because I like to have them displayed because they're like collector's items now. But back then I would always like check how many I got, like just going through the checklist. And I noticed that in 2008 there was a steep drop off of how many I got because like in 2007 I got a ton of them because I mean obviously I love the toys, and then 08 I got like 4. And then 09, I got a bunch. So just some reason 08, it dropped off. I never really connected the dots until many years later. I was like, oh, that's why I didn't get.
yeah. But then like, looking at like real time, like financial crises now, like we're all college students, yeah, we didn't feel the financial effect of the housing crisis, but we definitely felt the impacts of inflation and stuff like that now. Like going through our years of college, I feel like we're starting to take on more grocery bills and stuff like that. So like, I feel like, at least personally for me, like our financial shortcomings and stuff like that in our economy are definitely more felt. Like when I'm going out and getting like milk and eggs and I'm spending like $10 on 2 things and I'm like, okay. So I don't know. It's just, like I said, it's interesting to see, how you look at those things through the lenses of being a kid and not having that innocence. Another big one's just like diseases and stuff like that.
Fun.
Back in like 2008, I don't know if any of you remember the good old H1N1,
The swine flu.
the swine flu.
Yeah, swine flu.
I
I should be
remember
saying it
hearing
that
about
happily.
it.
I just like the name of it.
Yeah.
Swine flu.
And like I distinctly remember my mom being like, hey, we're going to be really serious about our flu shots this year. And I was like, okay. I didn't like needles back then. So I was like, I'm just going to get an extra dose of the mist.
I think everyone was scared of needles whenever they were younger.
Oh, yeah.
I got used to it eventually.
I
'cause
actually remember going to the auditorium at school and getting extra mist. I like remember that. So
Yeah.
that's crazy.
I used to get like allergy shots every Monday for like weeks, so I don't care about needles anymore. Originally, yeah, but now I just unfazed by it. But with swine flu specifically, I always latched on to the swine part a lot. I still do because I still laugh at the name of it. It's because of the swine part. But I became afraid of pigs.
Hey, that's fair.
Because I thought that was connected to it somehow. I mean, I have no idea, but I was just
The way
Paranoid.
The way I conquer my fear of needles is anytime I have to get a shot, I just say the alphabet backwards whenever I'm getting them. And that
That's
works.
fair.
you can do that.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
I can't do that either.
I mean, it's easier to do it slow rather than fast.
That's a good point. I think we just stare at the wall. I'll be incredibly honest. I just zone out and disassociate like crazy, and it works. It's a good as gold strategy.
You don't just stare at it and watch it enter your skin.
Nope. No, deathly afraid of needles. Yeah, don't want to get off on too much of a side tangent, but basically, the extent of my fear was if my younger sister was getting like a vaccination, and not even myself, it would still freak me out. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
I think that's kind of understandable because it'll feel like, oh, I feel like I should have to get this too.
Yeah,
Because like, she's getting it to protect herself. Like, oh, if I don't get this, then I'm going to get the disease.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Because sometimes that can get to you, like seeing other people get it. It'll make you think you have to get the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like what ties into tragedies a lot is conspiracy theories And as we get older,
Pigs rule the world. Swine flu.
as we get older, we hear a lot more about conspiracy theories, and we start maybe believing in some of them. And one thing that was a real big deal, or one thing that happened to me a lot when I was like in middle school, my dad was a huge conspiracy theorist. So anytime I would see something happen that was like some tragedy or global event, I would be like, oh, George Soros is behind it or something. I don't know. The hurricanes. Oh, it's probably because they turned the hurricane machine on right before the election, just to sway the election.
Yeah.
That's why they did it. Just like, it's another thing that impacts some people is conspiracy.
That is
theories.
true. Because, like, one example, I feel like, I don't know if this is counted as a tragedy, but it was, I think in 2020 when this happened, it was around when COVID happened, the murder hornets came to the US and people came up with
Yes.
people came up with conspiracy theories on how that could have happened. Some say a boat brought them over, some say a human being brought them over, and some say that they were actually that someone purposefully brought them over to attack the US during COVID.
Did anyone ever see any?
Huh?
They weren't in this area. They were more in the Pacific Northwest,
Oh,
like where
okay.
Washington is.
I
Where
know,
Bigfoot is.
I know that the truth behind a bunch of what happens is usually boring. It usually is like, it's not as exciting as how what it, might really be like wars and stuff like that. It's like the real reason why wars happen is usually over like some leader's desire for land or whatever. Sometimes conspiracy theories make it more interesting.
I think that's part of the reason why conspiracy theories exist, to kind of get more people into it.
It does.
It simplifies it, so you don't have to learn all the actual history and difficult parts of it. You can just say, "Oh, it's," instead of having to,
It's the shadow government.
instead of, "Oh, it's actually all this interconnected long stuff."
Yeah. Well, and it's just, I feel like now, with the presence of like social media and stuff like that, that's just completely blown. You'll get like one like small, like little like conspiracy theory or something like that. It'll like spark up on Twitter or something like that. Next thing you know, like it's the entire nation is talking about it, from like
Exactly.
the media outlets to like everybody on Twitter and Facebook. I think like a really good example was everything that just went down in Springfield with this election cycle, with the the rumors and stuff like that of like cats and dogs being eaten and stuff like that. That went from like one little like unverified news story from from a Springfield like local CBS affiliate into a pretty major political figure saying that there's people eating cats and dogs on live television.
See, that's the problem with social media these days, is they can pass so many false rumors and people will believe that it's true when there's not an actual verified source behind it.
If you say it loud enough and enough times, they'll listen to you.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like, it's
Speaking of, I am in charge here. Say it again. I'm in charge. You get the idea.
But just like looking at like, I guess the role of like social media and like spreading conspiracy theories and stuff like that, and like how gullible we were, like the younger we are, I feel like Bango said, you're more likely to buy into I don't want to call it the hype, but for lack of a better term, buy into the hype of, these conspiracy theories and stuff like that when you're younger, because, it's more interesting. There's more of a story to it, maybe not necessarily more substance, but, there's just something there that interests your little child brain a little bit more. So yeah, and just also, being young and being on social media, no young person is intelligent when they're using social media. Well, I can't say no one, but
So let's hand everyone iPads.
right.
I can't
iPhone.
even say even like some adults
Yeah.
are
No.
intelligent on social media.
Yeah.
That's something I've noticed. We've seen the posts where it's like, oh yeah, as a kid, your parents are, don't believe everything you see on the internet, but now you have to do the opposite to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was also just a really interesting thing, from like being a child to like being an adult now,
Look at this image. This is like something an adult conspiracy theorists would believe in. This is what
I can't see.
That's
Yeah.
a big
Yeah,
one now,
yeah.
like AI images and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
see that's another thing is AI
Like
will make it worse.
my poor grandma,
Yeah.
like she can't keep up, guys.
Oh,
Stop,
no.
please.
Yeah, no, the AI deepfakes and stuff like that, that's starting to get like
Oh yeah.
really volatile.
Do
Mm.
you all
Um,
remember where you were when like when you were in middle school? Did you all ever have to watch CNN? Whatever it was like a Carl Zeus.
The 10-minute recap of
Yeah.
yep.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We were like young, and that was like a moment in our lives when we were starting to get things. But then that was like school's idea of like, it was not like kids, or it wasn't like a PBS Kids were like puppet shows. It was like, I remember being in class and seeing Carl Zeus talk about the migrant crisis, and I was like, in middle school, and it was just like, y'all remember the first, when you don't know it when it's happening, but y'all remember like when global events happened, like when Barack Obama became president and they brought it on TV in class when we were in elementary school, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, we had a
Yeah.
mock election in elementary school where
So did I.
you could vote for Obama or Romney,
We
and
did-
they
we
would
did
like
that.
see who won. And what happened in the school was opposite of what happened in real life.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
We did that for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. We all went in and voted for each person, and then we watched Trump walk out live on TV.
Which is like kind of bad because I feel like at that age it's like we were really just reflecting our parents' opinions. I feel like a lot of people like during that, like say you and I, like I'm sure so many people, you could count them, what they did at that time is different what they would have done. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it was such a reflection of like their parents' opinion because you're like what we were in. How old were you all during that election? I think I was in like
Was it the
third
Donald
grade?
Trump one or the?
No, I'm
Obama-
talking about the
Obama
Obama one.
Okay, I was in
Elementary
I was in
school.
third
I
grade.
was in
I was
either
in third.
I was in
Yeah.
either third or fourth grade.
I
when
was
that
in either
happened.
third or second grade. And
Elementary school.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
so how old are you at that age? Like
I
max
turned,
like 9?
Yeah. What was that? The
I turned
2000 and
I turned 10 in third grade.
was that the 2012
Yeah.
election? So yeah, I was like 11.
I have a
So
funny.
like you don't know
Yeah, I would've
anything
been
about.
10.
I'm not saying you don't know anything, but
I did
it's
not.
all
I didn't
from
either.
your parents. If you know
Yeah.
anything at all, it's all from
Oh,
your
yeah.
parents. So it's like
We never understood the historical significance of a first black president either.
Oh
No,
no,
not at
no.
all.
I didn't think about that at all.
Yeah.
I
see
didn't even
race.
I didn't even realize that.
We just thought it was cool. Oh, first black
Yeah.
president. We don't understand how.
I think it was talked about a little bit in my household, so I was a little bit aware, but definitely not like if it happened now. Like if it were just now happening, I'd be like, it would be much
Yeah.
more significant.
It might
to me.
happen with the first woman president.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
that
was
would
about
be
to say
much
that,
more
actually.
significant
Mhm.
to me than.
I remember I sent a letter to the White House when it happened, when Barack Obama became president. I was 8, and I drew a picture and marker. It was like of his family, like his entire family, in front of the White House and marker. And it was like, and I mailed it to the White House, and I got a letter back from Obama with his signature on it.
That's pretty awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It was like typed out, but it was a penned autograph. It was a
Mhm.
penned signature. It
Were
was
you
pretty cool.
surprised? Were you surprised when you actually got?
Yeah, I
something
was.
back?
Yeah.
It's not every day you actually get something back from the president.
Another thing we probably also, like when COVID happened, I remember that's obviously the closest, largest historical thing that's happened in our lives
Yeah,
so far.
that'll go down in the history books.
Yeah.
But I remember we didn't even understand. What's so funny, I don't want to put Ron Ullman on blast, but when COVID was happening, right as it was going down, when we were like, so are we gonna not have school anymore? I remember I was in Ron Ullman's class. It was a graphic design class or something where we designed advertising with the Photoshop, and Ron Ullman said, "Oh, this will blow over in a week." And I didn't see him again for like 2 years.
I was like a junior in high school, and if you look back at my, which is embarrassing, but if you look back at my Snapchat memories, it's like I was so excited. We were getting extended spring break. I
extra
was
week of spring break.
I remember everyone was getting excited about that, but then you actually see, oh, it's not what we were expecting.
No,
Yeah.
because then 2 weeks turned into like
Well,
2 weeks turned into
months.
years.
Years.
Even.
Yeah.
Like, because my entire junior year of high school was hybrid. Like half
Me
days
too.
I'd go in person, and then half days I'd go online.
I'm so glad I graduated before that whole mess
Mhm.
happened.
Lucky you.
So I had environmental science class at the time. So when we got word that, hey, this lockdown is going to be for a while, we had like this mass evacuation of all these plants we were growing because they would have just died if we left them in the school. So we just had the school bus. We just loaded up with all these different kinds of plants for each student. It was nuts. I got pictures of that. It was fun.
The way I think of COVID, like whenever I think of COVID, it makes me realize that I really only had one normal year of high school, basically, which was my freshman year.
Yeah.
Because sophomore year started out normal, but then that's when COVID hit, and so we basically went online for the second half of the year. Junior year, half and half, and senior year started with us having to wear masks in there, but then eventually they got rid of that. And I never took a midterm or a final since my I haven't taken a final since my freshman year of high school, and I haven't taken a midterm since my sophomore year of high school.
Dang.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I was gonna say off of that, like, even now as adults, I don't think when a historical event happens, we probably still won't understand it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, it's just hard. Well, I feel like now that we're older, it's a little bit easier to grasp. But like, while you're living through a historical event, I feel like for very few people, the first thought that pops into your head is, oh yeah, this is going to be a very historical event.
Yeah.
Because you're mostly it's not good, so you're processing the traumas or whatever of what's going on.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like looking back, like we've said, like COVID, like when we were getting that extra week off spring break, we're like, oh, it's a little light something, and now
I still miss it sometimes.
That's fair.
I do too.
I still remember the exact day that it happened. Whenever they said that everyone was going to have to not go into the buildings,
Yeah.
I still remember the exact day.
I think like the specific day for me when like the realization that like COVID was like a real deal, like situation, scenario, and everything like that was when, and I know this is really corny, I'm like a really big sports fan, but when like the NBA and the NHL and the MLB came out and we're like, we're suspending the season. Like we're done. We're shutting it down.
Well, I think they all, like the NBA, got stuck having to play in Disney World. I think.
Yeah. You had the bubble season. That was great.
They had like holographic audiences.
Yes.
That was weird.
Yeah, the Zoom audiences were crazy.
Well, apparently they did it for like the actual players. I think just because they're used to having an audience in there.
Yeah. It was just a crazy time.
Did anyone else do the thing where like your grandparents moved in with you during COVID? No, just me. I thought that was a really common thing. Where like,
I had other family. Like I think, well, that was kind of complicated, but I know other people that
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So I think it is a common thing.
My aunt that lives in New York came home during COVID. She was too scared to go to the grocery store. Like she would text my dad
New York was
and
crazy.
every one of her siblings, like asking if they would go to the grocery store for her, and they all said no.
I remember I worked at a grocery store during COVID, and one thing I learned is that if there's ever a global event going on that makes people scared and want to stay inside, I will not volunteer to work during an event like that again. I'm gonna stay home like everyone else, and I'm gonna get that free money that they all got while I stayed and worked.
I can only imagine like how stressful that would be.
I remember Meyer was like it was like the only place that didn't shut down during COVID.
Oh yeah, they were open.
They gave me a special thing to put on my car that wouldn't let me get stopped by cops whenever I would go to work. I wouldn't because there was a curfew, remember?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, right.
And and I remember so many people came from different places to work there for a little bit because their job got shut down. And I remember they also got rid of the dress code so workers could just literally wear whatever they wanted.
Well, no wonder I could never figure out who was an employee in there.
Yeah. And I just one thing I will learn for next time when I went through that is like I'm gonna stay home like everyone else. I'm not gonna volunteer to work.
Right.
You're crazy.
I ended up picking up like a summer job like in June or July once we had that first like initial dip in cases and stuff like that. And then everybody started going back out again and stuff like that. I got a job as a server at Beef O'Brady's at Highlander Point. And it was just super surreal going from like restaurant experiences of like restaurants being packed, being like shoulder to shoulder with people, having somebody like you're in a booth and then there's just a table of 4 like literally right next to you, like no regard for space or anything like that. And then you get in there with COVID and you have all your booth dividers and everybody's masked up and there's hand sanitizer everywhere. And
it was crazy.
In between bites? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Putting on a mask in between bites?
Yes.
Oh, yep.
Oh, yeah.
Like, are you serious? Or going to the gym and having to wear your mask while you're huffing and puffing working
Or
out?
even like seeing people driving the car by themselves with their masks.
I still see that
Yes.
to this day.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about like the gym and stuff. I did cheer during like the peak of it, like school cheer, competitive cheer, all of it. We were required by, obviously, state required it. We could not take them off. Like the football players were allowed to take them off because they were outside, but we didn't do anything outside. So we were literally, it was disgusting. It was so gross, but we had to keep on a mask literally
Could
the
you
entire
even
time.
could you even breathe?
Would you go to games like that with a mask on? So you'd be like a
Whoa.
cheerleading squad masked up.
Yeah, we had our little names on our masks.
Okay.
Oh,
I
okay.
That's
remember.
official.
I think I
That's
remember
cool.
seeing cheerleaders like that had their names on their
Oh
masks.
yeah.
Like a little monogram.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay.
Alrighty. Well, I think we've had a pretty good discussion today on, how we looked at things as children and how we look at them now. I want to thank everyone that tuned in and listened today. And as always, we have episodes coming at you Mondays and Wednesdays. Mondays are a little bit more serious. Wednesdays are a little more silly and goofy. So tune in on Wednesday and we'll have an episode for you. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you later.